everybody, and welcome to our August 2025 astrology forecast. As always, I'm delighted to be joined by our esteemed faculty member, Shu Yap. So thank you so much for coming back on the show. And how are you doing today?
I'm good, Callum. Really great. And I'm looking forward to another forecast episode.
I'm always looking forward to your brilliant insights and your wisdom. So thank you for joining us. So before we get into the details of each week, Shu, what are your thoughts as an overview for the month of August? What's coming to mind?
What's coming to mind for me, and it's quite subtle, but it's kind of happening in the background for all of us, is that there's the formation of this big six-pointed star in the charts, or as we look at the skies, that will come to greater fruition next year. But we're starting to see this star form now with all of the big ingresses happening. We've had Pluto in Aquarius now, still early degrees. We've got Saturn and Neptune in the early degrees of Aries. We've also got Uranus in the early degrees of Gemini. So that's 3 points of the star that's made, and the star points will be in the fire and air signs. And what's interesting about this month is that Mars will be moving into Libra, and Venus will be moving into Leo, two other fire and air signs that will be forming 5 of the points temporarily for August this month. So that's an overarching flavor, I feel, for the month that is quite subtle. It's almost like something big is being engineered in the background. And when we get to next year, when Jupiter moves into Leo and taking the permanent 4th point of the star up, then it will be a matter of, the remaining 2 points being filled in with faster moving planets like the moon or Mercury and whatnot to create a grand sextile, which is something that's really rare to find in a chart, especially with this many outer slow moving planets involved. So this 6-pointed star, one could call it the Star of David, some people call it the grand sextile, is made up of 3 oppositions, 3 sextiles and 3 trines. So it's really using up a lot of the theory and aspects that we teach in the fundamentals course. And what does this all mean? And one of the things that I've learned from Bill Tierney, who's written a book called Dynamics of Aspect Analysis. It's a really great book. But he writes that this star aspect is kind of like ripe fruit. Do you want to keep it for yourself and have a lot of it rot away because you're being selfish and trying to hoard all of this ripe fruit for yourself? Or the better use for this energy is to start giving it away and sharing it out to your community so that everyone can share in a piece of this juicy ripe fruit. So using that as a metaphor, this star is kind of like having some creative gifts or talents within us that is ready to offer to the world. And it doesn't have to be a huge external, high profile project, but in some way allowing yourself to give of yourself in a way that's outside of your personal bubble. So it's something to think about this month, as we've got 5 of the 6 points forming. And the additional 2 points that we have this month is Mars and Venus forming that additional star points. And so this might speak to something to do with Mars and Venus, like relationships or independence or codependency, the give and take aspects, your motivation versus your desire for what you want to put that motivation towards. So it's just good to think of what you can give to the greater good of whether it's the world or the world around you this month. So stepping into more broader circles this month, I think.
I absolutely love those points. And it speaks to what's been happening in the last couple of years, not just talking about the month of August for 2025, but those outer planets, those slower moving planets. Of course, Pluto and Aquarius has been talked about at length. If we go back historically, we've seen the likes of the French and the American Revolution. Neptune now just dipping its toes into Aries. The last time that was in line with the American Civil War. And now with Uranus dipping its toes into Gemini, the last time we saw that was from 1941 to 1949. So it feels like in some ways we could be building, as you said, these cogs in the background. And in some ways we might get to an inflection point of which way are we going? Is it going to be a collective place where some of these aspects come together and it's less selfish and more egalitarian, or are we going to move towards the maybe the shadow side where we end up with conflict and outright, hopefully not global war, but things of that nature? So these outer planet dancers and the connections they're having, and along with what you're saying this month with both the Mars and the Venus, is a very interesting picture that is starting to emerge. So I'm very curious to see what comes ahead.
Yeah, and of course, this doesn't happen very often. And I found an example. I've got an article about this on my website, which we can pop into the link. But in 1948, President Harry Truman signed the Marshall Plan, which was an act to provide financial and material aid to Western Europe to help them in the rebuilding after the World War II. So this star is not actually going to come into full activation until next year. But we will get a little taste of it now. So it's almost like saying ideas that are floating around on how you can be of greater service or how you can show your talents and skills to the world. There might be ideas now, but the go button is essentially next year. So it's good to have that bit of foresight and just to think about what you want to do, and thinking long term as opposed to short term gains.
Wonderful point. And the one idea that's popping into my mind is recently we're seeing this big shift away from traditional media. So if we're talking about here in the United States, you're seeing the viewerships decline for the likes of CNN, MSNBC. You've still got Fox News going, but you're going to have the defunding of stations like PBS and NPR. And it's quite interesting with some of these outer planet shifts as well, is I think we might get to a point where that old traditional media starts to die out. Because as we're seeing right now, whether we're talking about Pluto and Aquarius, as opposed to that Pluto and a Capricorn, which is more of a hierarchical structure, we're seeing now people, YouTube people doing news. We're seeing a lot of people. This is not the Walter Cronkite of 50 years ago, where everyone had a shared reality and everyone tuned into the news and had the same set of facts. Right now, everyone is siloed in their own media bubbles that we're all essentially living in different realities. So it's quite interesting as you're talking about this. I
Mm,
wonder if this will relate to in the next few years is the death of traditional media and this new form of media that comes through. But that's just something that jumps into
yeah.
my mind.
I think definitely that is a Uranus and Gemini signification there. And even the risk of things like propaganda and, the rebellion voice, um, and the dissident voice getting more airtime. And so there is definitely a disruption in media that we're experiencing right now. And we're only at the beginning of it.
That's a great point. And not to go on a tangent again, but talking about propaganda, when we were talking about Uranus and Gemini in 1941, after the attacks on Pearl Harbor, the United States actually put together what was called the Office of of Information. And of course, all the major players in World War II all had their propaganda stations, whether it was, Germany, whether it was the British, the Americans. So I think propaganda is going to be a key word coming up, especially for
Yes.
the next few years.
Maybe another Sound of Music movie might emerge.
There you go.
I love that movie.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so diving into week one, Shu, what are your thoughts for the first week of August?
Okay, so week one is, I'm kind of seeing this is the Mars point being activated here because Mars moves into Libra and immediately it makes an opposition to Neptune and um, Saturn. At least it comes into close orb. Oh, no, it does come into exact orb in week one. So here I think we have an experience of potential confusion and the difficulties um, associated with your plans and what you're doing. And, it's kind of introducing an issue that's relatively new, possibly, but yet has a background since April, because Saturn, Neptune kind of was moving into those signs between sort of March, April kind of period of time. And it also coincides with the full moon, which is going to exacerbate, one's impulses and feelings and emotions and reactions. And so this first week could be a little bit, tension filled, I feel, where we could sort of see people, I don't know, maybe not explode per se. There's definitely something more subtle about this Mars. It is kind of a Mars in Libra, and the aspects that it's making is with like subdued signs like Neptune and Saturn. But I just can't help but think of this rebellious full moon kind of driving these emotional impulses. And so there could be some seething happening here that might lead to bigger things, or that might lead to maybe inspiring you to do something about these problems.
Points. And really speaking and building on what you're saying, I think week one is the week out of the month of August where we might be feeling maybe some of these frustrations and tensions that you're talking about. We've got Venus zipping by its square to Saturn and Neptune. Now, not only is this a difficult aspect for Venus, they, in terms of their relationship, is not better, because you have Venus that finds her detriment in Aries, and then Saturn finding its detriment in Cancer. So that is compounding, I think, this tension between the Venus and the Saturn. Now, I think this can manifest in many different ways, maybe on the collective. Sometimes you might see a Venus in rubbing shoulders with Saturn. You might see a dip in the markets. On a personal level, this might just be a case of reining in your spending, getting a reality check from Venus. So if you've been indulging yourself over the summer, it just might be a quick reality check over a couple of days where you rein in some of that spending. It could also mean and talk about relationships. So it could be a reality check with relationships. It could be if you maybe had a summer fling and then you get to this point and it's kind of like, okay, time to have a check-in and see how the relationships are going. But that's not only for flings and relationships of that nature. It could be long-term partnerships where you maybe have to have a serious conversation, things of this nature. But saying that Venus squares that Neptune, so you might ignore the reality check and you might end up getting the rose-tinted glasses. So it just depends what works for
Yes.
you and what's going on your chart, what might happen
Yes.
that way.
I think, yeah, like the reality check thing, I think is definitely what's going to happen. But the problem with this week and this month is that we actually don't know which reality to check in with. And I think that's the conundrum of this Saturn Neptune, but we feel it very intimately here with two personal planets, Mars and Venus, at play. And so essentially what's happening is a big T square happening with Mars, Venus, and Saturn, Neptune. And so to me, it feels like a bit of a clash of opinions, or a clash of desires, and then being in a bit of a stalemate, to come to any action. But yet this seems very highly motivating for something that is about to occur. And it also feels like something that's not new, because Saturn and Neptune are retrograding. So it has been over this terrain before. And so, and this is the first time Mars and Venus are making that contact with the newly arrived Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So to me, I don't think it's a new issue. It's about revisiting something to do with your desire, to do with your power or will, and and trying to work out what to do moving forward. So you're not going to move forward yet, but it's just the working out all of these dynamics here that's happening in August in week one.
I love those points, and particularly the key word there, desires. I always, well, tell myself and other people, especially when you have a Venus connection with Neptune, I always avoid big purchases at that time, because what your desires are, maybe not what comes into reality when you receive them on the doorstep. So maybe give it a few days before you make any major purchases. But to compound these frustrating energies, as we've talked about, we've got that Mars entering its detriment and then hitting the opposition to Saturn. So again, it just builds on this element of frustration. if you've got any projects on the go, it might just be a couple of days where you feel a bit frustrated. Certainly not the best time to start any projects or start anything new, because here we've got Mars, which is the planet of taking action, taking the initiative. Mars is essentially the foot on the gas. And then with Saturn, we've got Saturn saying no with the foot on the brake, and it's retrograde. So with these two coming at loggerheads, it's kind of both feet on both the gas and the brakes, and you're not getting very far if you've got
No.
two feet on both pedals. So this just might be a time where, again, just builds into this picture of the first week and maybe having that opportunity to be a little bit frustrating. And then it's not helped, I think, by the Mars, obviously, in its opposition to Neptune. I always think about this aspect in terms of, do you ever have that dream where you're trying to run away from something and you end up, it feels like you're in quicksand and you're just not getting very far. So with the Saturn, holding the brakes, and the Neptune, I just got that sense of it's kind of like running through quicksand and not getting very far. So this might be,
Totally.
compared to week two, this might be the least helpful week for August.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you need to watch for like, there are two malefic planets involved with Neptune. So maybe deception, lies, manipulation, maybe guilt trips and things like
Mm.
that. These are all these personal dynamics that are coming out to play that's causing confusion and potential blow-ups with this full moon that's also Saturn ruled.
Absolutely. And I don't know if it has a different story with the Venus square Saturn, but maybe the Mars, obviously it takes its domicile from Aries. Saturn has its exaltation in Libra. I don't know if that'll help somewhat mitigate anything. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see
Sure.
what goes on
We'll
with that.
see. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, into week two, Shu, your thoughts?
Well, week two, Mercury will station direct, which will, I guess that's going to help things move forward. But what I really like about week two is this lovely Venus Jupiter conjunction in Cancer. I mean, we have Venus that's very happy in Cancer, Jupiter that's exalted in Cancer. So this is a really great day or week, for that matter, to really maybe reconcile or gather with the people that you love, doing things that you enjoy. There's a real collaborative, uniting front when these two planets come together to really do something that lifts your hopes and to make you feel good. So I think week two is a good week to plan for something nice. That if you've struggled in the first week, there's hope. The second week is going to lift your spirits up a little bit more.
I love that, Shu. My thoughts exactly. When I was looking at week two, I was like, if this is a time where you're taking a vacation, this is probably around August 12th for a couple of days. It's probably the best day of the month for me, whether that's for romance, for pleasure. As you're saying, Shu, we've got the two benefics together. We've got this beautiful Venus-Jupiter conjunction. We've got Jupiter exalted. Here we're in cardinal water. So I like what you're saying. This might be a time where you're enjoying maybe a vacation with close friends and family, maybe kin, that Cancerian quality. So whether you're on vacation, whether you're just at your local pool, this is a great time. It's still a cardinal sign, so it's still a time to maybe take pleasure in taking some action. So you're going for a swim, things of that nature. But this is a beautiful
Mm.
connection for this date, and especially if you like to elect any dates in your own work, August 12th is very nice, depending on what else is going on in
Mm-hmm.
the charts. And I
Mm-hmm.
think maybe the only word of caution for week two is, of course, Mercury station to go direct. Now, yes, it's going direct, but as we know, any planet that stations to go direct or retrograde tends to be quite loud in the sky. So here, for the couple of days surrounding August 11, we still might have some mercurial mishaps. So if you are on vacation, I would certainly double check your itinerary, just double check the times, things of that nature, because we might see some mercurial hiccups at this stage. But really, week two is about my favorite week for August,
Yes.
certainly for pleasure and joy, romance, all of those really nice times.
Totally. And we have Mars here activating the star point with a trine to Pluto. And so this is something that you might not understand straight away, but it's going to be part of your big picture, wherever Mars and Pluto fall in your chart. So just observe where Pluto is, where Aquarius is in your chart, and what Mars does to it this month as it trines, because that's going to feed into your direction for this year and next.
Yeah, I love that. And speaking about where it falls in your chart, when we go to each rising sign, it might give you a little bit of a better idea when we're talking about Venus, Jupiter conjunction, where that might manifest in your life. But of course, like anything, you have to compare that to your own natal chart and what's going on there. This is just kind of a general overview of some of the possibilities that we have with the astrological weather. Okay, into week 3. Shu, what are your thoughts?
Week 3, this is the new moon week, and this is the week where uh, Venus, I think, starts to make all these content. So that's next week. But yeah, the main thing this week is the new moon in Virgo, I think. So there's not a lot of stuff happening to me, in my opinion, for this week, but a lot of new moon Virgo energy, which is essentially the opening of the eclipse portal, because by the next full moon, it will be an eclipse. So we could see some rumblings and stirrings, happening, especially around your Pisces house, wherever that might be, because it will be a full moon in Pisces, a lunar eclipse in Pisces. And so now's the time to really start bunkering down, I feel, with this new moon, and start getting organized. Start to clean up the diary and uncommit yourself wherever you need to, or get things done before things get a bit too intense. So a lot of planning, I think, involved in this new moon that will be really helpful.
Wonderful point. I always think about this in terms of Leo season, we're having a party, and then we've got Virgo season that comes in. It's kind of like the cleanup committee. So it's a great time, as you're saying, Shu, to organize. Not only have we got the sun moving into Virgo, but we've got the new moon in Virgo just reinforcing that point. So again, good time to organize. Maybe get that. It might not feel quite that back to school feel yet, because we're still going to have Mercury in fixed fire. We're still going to have Mercury in Leo. And in the next couple of days after this, I believe the 25th, we're going to have Venus that goes into Leo. So it might not be party season over just yet, but you might still have those rumblings of that back to school feel, trying to get organized, all of those keywords really for mutable Earth. And another thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, it'd be quite interesting if you have in your own chart any planets in early degrees of mutable signs. Let us know in the comments if you feel any. When I say very early, it's very early, literally from 0 to 1 degree. Because of course we've got Uranus in Gemini, and of course we've got the Sun entering Virgo. We've got the Virgo new moon. So it's quite interesting. If you've got any early degrees of mutable signs, let us know in the chat if you felt any of this shift as Uranus has just dipped its toes in. And of course, that'll be going back out and then coming back in as we go through. But yeah, not much other than that. Week 3, I don't think there's much going on at this point.
No. Yep. Yes.
A lot more going on in week 4. So, Shu, what are your thoughts?
Yes, this is what I thought. Venus is moving into Leo in week 3, but it's week 4, and this is where it seems like there's a lot going on, but there's a lot of repetition. This is basically the activation of the 5th star point there. Venus now being involved in 5 of the 5th point of the 6 points of the grand sextile. Therefore, we get a really good preview in week 4 about perhaps what we want to do ourselves that might benefit others, like, or that might bring us outside of our comfort zone, our personal bubble. And Venus will represent things like our creativity, our talents, our values that we want to drive through. And being in Leo, one might think, oh, am I being selfish or am I being self-indulgent? But really it's about, as I write in my article, it's about how are we going to tend to this sort of inner fire within us so that we can then warm up the world in the future. So we need to start cultivating something within ourselves that is, uh, going to be perhaps ready to be explored or launched or whatever it is next year when these 6 points become activated. So this is all part of that journey.
I love those points. And this was probably my second favorite week out of August, because if we contrast week 4 with week 1, that first week we had, those potentials for frustrations, especially with Venus rubbing up against shoulders of Saturn and Neptune. But here we've got this ease. As Venus enters fixed fire, we get into Leo. We have those ease of aspects, both with the Venus trine to Saturn, then we've got the trine to Neptune, and then we've got the sextile here as well. So speaking to your point, Shu, this is a little bit of an ease of the energy where maybe if we're talking about desires or relationships earlier in the month where we may be getting a reality check or we may be getting rose tinted glasses, this might be a time if we're talking about our desires or relationships, things of this Venusian nature. When we've got the trine to Saturn, we've got opportunities to build structures or new structures. With the trine to Neptune, this is a great time, even on the individual level, to go and enjoy a museum with your partner, things of this nature. And I think this is going to be an easier connection with this Venus dance as we go into week 4. Now, the Venus opposite Pluto, of course, Venus moves quite fast, so it's these are only brief for a day or two, but maybe the only spoke in the wheel here might be the Venus opposite Pluto, which you might see some power struggles or in relationship dynamics, things of that nature. But really, this is probably my second favorite week, I think.
Yeah. And I think the important thing is like what you mentioned, it's like being able to actually see the opportunity as opposed to being blind to it. And I think this is what these configurations allow us to do. That previously, like in week 1, you might have just seen problems, but by week 4, hopefully you start to see how you can resolve these problems or the light at the end of the tunnel, as they say. So, yeah, so I don't think just obviously, like you said, Venus, Pluto, yes, that can sometimes seem challenging from a personal dynamics perspective. But if we look at it at the bigger picture, it's feeding into something quite beautiful.
I love that point. And we've also got this element here. We've got a lot of the planets in the outward polarity. We've got a great deal of mix and fire and air. And elementally, I feel like the air and the fire work quite well together. Because if you think about fire, what does fire need? It needs oxygen in order to grow. If you've got a lot of fire in your chart, or if you've got a mix with air as well, I feel like the fire and air signs require quite a lot of freedom and independence in many ways. I've got a little bit of fire, a little bit of air in my own chart, so it craves this freedom, independence. So if we can push those energies in a positive and a creative light, as she was saying, I think this could be a wonderful time. And just again, how many planets have we got in outer polarity? Because we've got the Sun and the Venus, we've got Uranus in air, we've got Pluto in air. I was trying to think of how many other planets we have with an inward
Yeah.
polarity. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of it's like the mix of inspiration and ideas, working together. So it could be really exciting, but I think it's definitely something that's in the making. This is just a bit of a preview, I feel, in August this year.
I love that. I think preview is the key word, and especially with the outer planets as well, is the preview of what might be happening as it dips its toes, and some of those are going to be retrograding back into the inward polarity signs. So that's really going to be quite interesting over time. Wonderful. Well, Shu, thank you so much as always about going through the weeks and some of the potential energy that we might have coming up. And now we're going to move into each rising sign. So into our Aries rising friends, Shu, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's lots happening for our Aries rising friends because that big T square that we spoke about with Venus, Saturn, Neptune, then Mars at the opposition is going to be activating all of your angular houses. So this is where life feels like there's a bit of a big, I guess, it could feel dramatic. It could feel like there's a big reset that's in the making, that you're being forced to kind of make changes here and consider what you want and what you're willing to put your effort towards. So, yeah, it could be a bit of a challenging and very active month for you to be moving and shaking and making some big shifts in your life. So I think Yeah, that's but in terms of like the second week when we've got that Venus Jupiter conjunction in Cancer, that shows up in your fourth house, which is the house of your home and your family and your foundations. And so you could see opportunities um, show up, or some nice experiences around the home there that can kind of ease your month a little bit. And with Mercury going direct in the fifth house, as well as the new moon in the sixth house. So this quadrant of your chart, the fourth, fifth, and sixth, um, is really going to be highlighted for new beginnings or new opportunities, a way forward. So look to family, look to children or your creative interests, and look to your daily work in terms of where the light at the end of the tunnel might be.
I love those points, Shu. And just tying in, I think on the positive end for you, Aries Rising, we've got the sun highlighting the fifth house whole sign. So we've got Mercury in there. Of course, that'll be stationing to go direct. So we do have this house of creativity. If this might be a good time, if you've got any children to, play with them, especially if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. Most of us have our children out for the summer. So this is a great time for any creative endeavors, or if you're involved in any sports. And as we get into the later part of August, that Venus is going to move into fifth as well. So that can bring out maybe some fun or creative pleasure, all of these keywords. And that might be quite nice, especially if you have early degrees of Aries rising. You might have some of that Venus connection to your ascendant. So I think on the positives, this might be a really nice time for that. And speaking to what Shu was saying, we have this wonderfully exalted Jupiter in the whole sign fourth house. We're going to have this wonderful Venus Jupiter conjunction, the two benefics getting together. And again, in the area of home life, this might be a great time to have close family, friends over, have a party at home, especially with all that fifth house creativity going on. So this might be a wonderful time. And of course, we've got the preponderance of the transiting planets below the horizon. So for you, this, and has been for a while, is more of a private time. It's in the quadrants of home and family, and it might be just people in your close immediate environment is very important to you at this time. Now, the shadow part or the possibilities for some downfalls here is that we're going to have your chart ruler move into its detriment. And talking about angularity, as Shu is saying, we're going to have that Mars in an angular house in your seventh house in detriment, and it's your chart ruler, and it's going to be rubbing shoulders with the other planets and in conflict. So this could denote, and it doesn't always mean this, but it could denote maybe some conflict, maybe with your partners. This might not be romantic partnerships. This could be if you're involved in business relationships. It could be, conflicts along those lines. We've got Mars ruling the eighth house of shared resources. So maybe yourself or partners being, maybe spending too much. Things of this nature. Of course, you have to look at your own natal chart to find more information. But I think that Mars might just be a word of caution as you get deeper into August.
Yeah, a great way to use that Mars is maybe to do a sport, or because Mars is the planet of movement and activity, moving into your seventh house of competition. So, and the competition looks like it's in detriment with Mars moving in there. So it could be that that might be a nice remediation for you to make use of that Mars and put it towards something productive.
Absolutely. I love that. Fantastic. Okay, into our Taurus rising friends. Shu, your thoughts?
Um, Taurus rising. Well, there are one thing that jumps out to me is the Venus star point thing that's happening in the fourth week, which is, like you said, your second favorite week of the month. Of course, one point is the fact that Venus rules Taurus, but it is also forming this trine from the fourth house, which is, oh no, have I got that right? Venus. Oh, well, yes, it will be moving into Leo by week 4 into your fourth house, which will be lovely in terms of doing things around the home and, being creative, especially around what you do at home in your own private space. And it's making that trine to Saturn and Neptune in your 12th house. So this could feel like a really lovely self-care kind of week for you, something to look forward to, and retreating a little bit, and really filling up your cup from that sort of deep inner level. In terms of all of the other big activities, it's not going to be that angular for you, besides Mercury moving direct in the fourth house of home as well. So if you've got projects going on at home, this month might be the month in which you can really work towards getting things going and really enjoying your space at home a lot more, I feel. And then, of course, then there's that full moon that's happening for you in the 10th house there. And so maybe some realizations about what you're doing at work, in your outer life, might be anticipated here. Maybe you've got some power struggles or issues with control at work that might be forcing you to rethink what you're doing, and maybe wanting you to retreat to the solace of your home life a little bit more by the end of the month. So I think that's the key insights I have for Taurus. What about you, Callum?
Wonderful point, Shu. One of the things that jumps up for me for you, Taurus Rising, this month, I've just got this picture of, especially on the positive realm, in terms of having pleasurable short trips. You've got the chart ruler in there. We're going to have exalted Jupiter in your whole sign third house for the best part of a year. So when these two benefics come together this month, I've just got this image of just really enjoying your local environment, whether that's going to the local pool to relax, or for go to a swim, or go to a museum, or any things of this nature. I just think of, if you can, have a local pleasure trip. I think this is going to be a wonderful month for you, Taurus Rising, to do this. And of course, with Venus being your chart ruler, it's reinforcing this wonderful connection with the two benefics. And of course, a lot of these planets, the preponderance of planets, apart from the outer planets and one social planet, is we've got a lot of planets below the horizon. So we're still in the realms of private life, those in your immediate environment. We've got the sun highlighting the whole sign fourth house, so there might be a lot of activity there. As Shu is saying, we've got Mercury being quite loud in terms of it's going to be stationing to go direct. So that might bring up some of the themes of the fourth house. So that might bring up home, family life, all of the key words for the fourth house. And what else was I going to say? It'd be quite interesting as we got that Mars going through into your whole sign sixth house. Mars not in a great shape when it gets into Libra, it's in its detriment. So this can manifest in many different ways. This could just be a sense that maybe work starts to pile up a little bit. If you make that connection with what she was saying about the bigger picture of Pluto going through your whole sign 10th house for the next 20 years, there might be something along the lines of, as she was saying, power struggles. But as that Mars dips into the sixth house, maybe it's, again, maybe work is piling up, things of this nature. A good way to use that Mars would be maybe look at a new health or fitness regime, things of that nature. Anything that pertains to health might be a good time to do this. But yeah, I think for you, Taurus Rising, very much, I would definitely go and enjoy those local environments, would be my
Mhm.
advice for this month. Wonderful.
Great advice. Now on to Gemini. I think for Gemini risings, what we need to really focus on this month is to prepare you for the upcoming eclipses, because the new moon in Virgo, like I mentioned before, is the opening window of the upcoming eclipse, and that's going to be hitting you right at your core in the fourth house. So you could be feeling tensions around the home start to rear itself and be revealed to you during this new moon. It's time to start making plans for organizing yourself in the home, so that you feel like you have some sense of control, at least over your immediate environment. Now, there's a lot of activations and activities kicking off that Saturn-Neptune conjunction there in your 11th house with Mars and Venus, making contacts there. So there could be some tensions perhaps within your friendship groups or within your community that might be making you feel a little stressed out, and this could all be forming around August. So I'd just be a little bit cautious and step back a little bit and work on your, I guess, anxiety levels, and learn how to manage your stress levels internally. Maybe making something a comfortable space at home where you can retreat to.
Wonderful advice. It's quite interesting when you were talking about there the Saturn Neptune picture in terms of community groups, because my wife is a Gemini rising, and I can feel something bubbling already. Do you know when your partner comes home and you know they're talking about certain things that are happening? So she goes to this book club, and anyway, there's a whole drama going off, but I can feel that bubbling already. So it'd be quite interesting when you're talking about some of those issues with community groups, whether that will start to flare up in the next few weeks. So probably come back and say, I'm not going back
Mm-hmm.
again. There's all sorts of drama going on. Anyway, I digress, but I
Good
think that speaks to
example.
that.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, because nothing
Wonderful.
else is that much. There's not much angular activity happening in the
Hmm.
transits for Gemini risings, but I just can't help but think that this is the calm before the storm. That if you're feeling restless about something, or wanting to change, or things are being stirred up around you, it's a sign that the eclipses are coming. And sometimes we want to just react and make drastic changes, but really it's about really going within. New moons are all about going within and pulling back from the outer world. It's a dark moon, and deal with some of these dissatisfactions internally. Yes, and that's the other thing with a new moon in Virgo. You could be feeling just annoyed or dissatisfied and nitpicky about things, especially around the house, where this new moon is happening. So don't go and rip up all your carpets at this stage. It's probably just an eclipse feeling. Don't bite off more than you can chew.
Great advice, absolutely. And I think one of the major positives I'm thinking about with Gemini rising, and this can be playing out for a period of time, but of course, this is just a general conversation. You have to look at your own natal chart to see what's going on. But we have this wonderfully exalted Jupiter. We're going to have the two benefics joined together this month, and it's going to be in your whole sign second house. Now we have this Jupiter ruling your 10th house. We've got the North Node up there, highlighting the area of life. So I know already for some Gemini risings, for some of them, the elements or the area of career for many of my friends have been going quite well. Actually, my wife has just got a new position, a higher up position at a college. And again, this is not going to speak to everyone, but there might be opportunities with Jupiter for the best part of the year, being in the whole sign second house, and Venus now touching together, the two benefics. So you might see maybe some opportunities for increased income. There could be some opportunities for, yeah, just a bit more abundance. It might be, not just maybe material wealth, things of this nature. But in the second house, this could be again tied to career with Jupiter ruling the 10th house. And again, this is not going to be for everyone. You have to look at your own natal chart. But I think that's a positive for Gemini rising at this moment in
Mm-hmm.
time, especially with the two benefics coming together. Of course, this
Yep.
month we've got the sun highlighting the third house. We've got Mercury stationing to go direct. So you might have, again, maybe just work piling up to a certain degree in terms of maybe there's a lot of emails coming through, things of that nature, mercurial things where we have to, be maybe, people are being bombarding us with requests or different things at work. We've got Mars ruling the sixth house. Mars is going to go into its detriment in the fifth. So, maybe some co-workers may be a bit annoying this month, but in general, I think it's going to be quite interesting. One thing that I'll be maybe cautious about, and I think I talked about this last month, if you've got really early degrees of Gemini rising, I'd be very curious about that Uranus. Now, that Uranus is only going to make it to 1 degree before it goes retrograde, but if you are a very, very early degree Gemini rising, let us know in the comments if you felt that shift of Uranus right
Mm.
now and any radical changes or things of that nature.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
totally.
Okay,
Excellent.
into our Cancer rising friends. Shu, your thoughts?
Okay, well, Cancer is a cardinal sign. So all the cardinals are getting hit this month with this big T square with Saturn, Mars, Neptune, and Venus. And so at all angles, you know, from your career to your health and body to your home. You know, you're going to be experiencing both tensions as well as what you can do about these tensions. And like we said before, these aren't new themes, like these are things that you have already come across this year as a big, I guess, be in your bonnet, so to speak. But you're really being forced to think about what's important, and maybe things may feel a bit topsy-turvy for you because you don't know what's up or down sometimes. So it can be a very confusing time. Um, but there's also opportunities for you to be able to resolve or at least come to some ideas that can give you some peace and unity within your mind and your thoughts. Venus and Jupiter are coming together in your first house. So that shows that there's great help coming to you this month. And at the very least, the feeling of um, consolidation or unity or coming together within yourself, or feeling the support of people around you that are coming towards you. So yeah, it's going to be quite an active and dynamic month for you. But I think at the crux of it is really what you want to do with your life, like how, you know, you may be feeling that you need to do something different, that you're being bored, getting bored about what you're currently doing with your life, and you know, you want change, you want something new. So this is the month where it can feel very intense, that almost like you're being forced to kind of change in some way.
Yeah, I love those points, Shu, because I feel like for Cancer Rising, it's a bit of a mixed bag this month, like it has been for a while. I think on the positive end, if you're feeling that life, and to Shu's point, if you're feeling like life is a bit cumbersome or a little bit stressful in certain ways, I would certainly say, if you have the means to, a long distance trip would be very nice at this point. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere where it's summer and you can maybe get away, maybe get overseas or go long distance, I think that might be very helpful for you, Cancer Rising, just to get your bearings back, as opposed to maybe a short trip in the local environment. We've got an exalted Jupiter ruling the ninth house, we've got the North Node in the ninth, highlighting that area, the ninth house whole sign. And if you can't make it to go out further afield, this might be just a nice time if you're, again, feeling a bit stressed out, to go and treat yourself. Maybe have a bit of a makeover, go for a massage. We've got Venus, which is zipping by, but it's going to be touching your ascendant degree at some point. So that might be a nice day or two to go again on a bit of a self-indulgent pleasure trip, maybe go and have a makeover, things of this nature. The only thing I'd watch out for Jupiter going through the first house for the best part of a year is weight gain. So just be mindful of maybe some overindulgence, especially with Jupiter, because as much as Jupiter is benefic, it also expands. So also watch out for, you know, maybe some overindulgence, because in the area of life, and of course it depends on what's going on with your natal chart, this is just a general overview, but we do have that Saturn Neptune in the whole sign 10th house. We have Chiron up there as well in the whole sign 10th house. We're going to have Mars going into an angular house, into your fourth house, going into its detriment. So the areas of tension for this month might be, it could be a conflict between home life and career. It could be, you know, it could be some issues with bosses, things of this nature. So if this has been an issue for you, this is maybe a great time to maybe book off a few days and get away if you have the means to. And of course, watching out for that Mars as it goes deeper through the fourth house, because not always, you know, on the positive end, Mars might just be in more energy or more concentration on the home life, but it also on the shadow side could mean some conflict at home. Of course, anytime that Mars becomes angular, it's going to rub shoulders with whatever your ascendant degree is. So again, to Shu's point, maybe some elements of frustration, but I think with the two benefics coming together and Jupiter wonderfully exalted in Cancer, it's going to be a time where you can at least have some escape and some pleasures in your life.
Absolutely. Well said.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Into
Okay.
our Leo rising friends. Shu, your thoughts.
Yeah, Leo, I think this is the place of that, you know, star point that's being activated here. Venus will be moving into your first house by the end of the month. And that's definitely something to look forward to. Things might be starting to feel exciting for you, like creative ideas or impulses that are starting to feel almost real, perhaps. Very palpable in some sense. So definitely I would make use of that Venus in the first house to do things like, maybe it is a makeover or like to redo your aesthetics in some way. It's a good time for photography or to rebrand or to just get a bit of a personal refresh, I think, when Venus moves into the first house. Then by the end of the month, you've got, Venus making that lovely trine to Saturn and Neptune there, which can be a really nice way for you to sort of integrate who you are as a person, all of your beliefs, and how you move about and explore the big wide world, and bring that all in together. Meaning can be, your life can kind of bring on a new sense of meaning, a wonderful new perspective on life, perhaps. So I think this is a really great month for more of the fixed signs, because they're kind of out of the firing zone for a little bit more. We do have Mars, however, moving into your seventh house, into this. Oh no, sorry, Pluto is in the seventh house there. I'm not Mars, and that can kind of show this sort of ongoing tension in relationships that you sorting through. But as Venus comes into your first house, maybe you may reorientate some of your beliefs and values, and hopefully come to some way forward in terms of any potential issues there. So yeah, what about your thoughts, Callum?
Yeah, wonderful point, Shu. Like Leo Rising, this is your season. Of course, you are in the spotlight. We've got the sun highlighting the first house. So depending on what ascendant degree you are in the spotlight in some way. I always find with charts when you've got sun conjunct the ascendant, you always find people who walk into a room, whether they know it or not, just have this presence. I'm thinking some of the famous charts like Abraham Lincoln, for his time, he was such a tall, a commanding fella, and he had Sun conjunct the ascendant. So again, Leo season, you're in the spotlight. This is a good time to be out and about and enjoying yourself. If you are on vacation at any point, we've got Mercury going through the first house as well. So any time a planet comes through the chart and it's angular, it's always going to have a little bit of extra oomph. So with the sun moving in, obviously into its domicile, this might bring a little bit of more vitality to a certain degree as we go through the
Mm-hmm.
angular first house. As Stu was saying, later on in the month, we're going to have Venus dip its toes into Leo. I think Venus is going to get to about 8 degrees. So if you have early degrees of Leo rising between 0 and 8 degrees, this might be a nice time to treat yourself, maybe go for a makeover, go and get a massage. Just treat yourself to a certain degree and have fun that way. And yeah, really, I like what you're saying, Shu. For the fixed signs, it's not really as much of an oomph in these charts. We do have, as you said, we've got this Mars moving into its detriment in the whole sign third house. It rules the ninth house. Of course, we've got that Saturn, Neptune up there as well, along with Chiron. So some of the house matters might manifest there. But I think maybe one of the shifts that has shifted in the last couple of months, I know with some of my Leo rising friends, was in terms of some of maybe the financial picture or some of the financial struggles. A good friend of mine, again, this is not going to be for every Leo rising, but they had a really hard time about borrowing money for projects from the banks when we had Saturn for the best part of 2.5 years going through the whole sign eighth house. So this might be a time where some of those money concerns, if you've had any, may be starting to ease up as we get deeper into the month, as we get even deeper into the year, because we have an exalted Jupiter ruling the eighth house, North Node in the eighth as well. So if you've been having any financial issues, then this might ease up as we go deeper into this month and the year. Possibly, you have to look at your charts as well. Wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. And for the Virgo risings, I think the thing that you need to watch for is the new moon in Virgo. Like I mentioned before, it is the beginning of the eclipse lunation cycle. And it seems like there's tensions that could be forming around your financial situation. I'm just looking at this Mars opposition to Neptune and Saturn between the second and eighth houses. And I'm just wondering whether you need to be extra cautious about some maybe things like fraud or scams that are happening. Maybe investments might not be doing so well for you in this month because you do have that sort of malefic sort of activity happening across that axis. It could be just feeling tensions and dissatisfactions in your livelihood, or just feeling that financially things are just a bit tough or in a bit of a grind there. So that's one thing that you need to kind of be wary of, that there is this sort of financial strain, I want to say, happening. I guess it's happening for a lot of people, but I think the Virgo risings will be feeling that a little bit more deeply. And then with the eclipses about to form in your angular first and seventh houses, this is something that to be wary of, to start planning, to start getting organized and clearing things out that you don't need, because there's potentially some more turbulent times ahead of you in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, great point, Shu, and that's something that struck me as well when looking at the chart Virgo rising. Of course, this is a general conversation. You have to look at your own natal chart, but we do have this financial picture coming into light. Of course, we've got the malefic, we've got the Saturn conjunct Neptune, we've also got Chiron in the mix in the whole sign eighth house. As Shu was saying, we're going to have that Mars move into the whole sign second house, going into its detriment. So again, we've got the two malefics both in the axis of the financial axis in the chart. So there might be issues along the lines of maybe some financial restraints. That Saturn it's eventually it's going to dip back into Pisces and then go back into Aries, but this might be a longer couple of year picture where you might struggle if you're looking to borrow money for a project, or there might be some concern about shared resources in some way. Or even on the positive end, with Mars going through the second house, you maybe just put more effort into, maybe you want another sideline of income or another stream of income, maybe putting more energy into that area. Me and Shu have talked about this before, especially with Saturn in its fall in Aries. We've talked a lot about self-reliance and resilience. And I think Virgo rising, if you are an Earth rising sign, if you have green thumbs at all, this might be a great time. If you do have any issues in the financial picture, and if you have the means to, is to start growing your own food. I've started to do that here. That element of self-reliantness and that resiliency that, again, me and Shu have been talking about for the past couple of months might be a good idea, especially if it ties in to the financial picture. I think some of the positives here, we've got the two wonderful benefics joining forces in your whole sign 11th house. This might be a great time in terms of being involved with friendship groups. Any community events might be a nice escape if life has been a bit cumbersome at any point. Might be a nice time to get in with a large group of friends, whether that's maybe you're involved in a book club or some sort of community. I think that's going to be very pleasant for you. And the thing with you, Virgo rising, if some of you are, maybe a bit more introverted, the problem here for a while now is the preponderance of transiting planets are mainly above the horizon. So it's been hard for you to try and retreat or to get away for some time. And now we've got the Sun and the Mercury highlighting the whole sign 12th house. We might have a little bit of an opportunity here to maybe pull yourself back, go behind the scenes if you need to a little bit, and maybe try and rejuvenate. Or you might get a bit of energy by being with friendship groups, but close friendship groups, I would say, at this time for
Mm.
you, Virgo rising, I think.
Mhm.
Oh, and the last thing I'd caution, if you've got late degrees of Virgo rising, watch out for that Mars. Let us know in the comments if you've had any issues with that Mars. Doesn't always mean, accidents or cutting yourself with a knife in the kitchen. It can also mean, more energy, vitality to a certain degree. But let us know in the comments how that
Mm.
Mars has
Silly
been treated.
mistakes as well, mistakes in rushing around and
Yeah,
impulsivity.
exactly. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Absolutely. I've got to watch out because I'm Libra Rising and I've got trips to go on.
Ah.
Here we are.
So
Okay,
Libra
into our
rising.
Libra Rising friends. Shu, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, there is this malefic activity between the first and seventh there. So I would say, things could be a little bit tense if you're in relationships or potential conversations that needed to be had, and difficult matters arising in terms of partners, whether it's business partners, romantic partners, and yourself. I feel like part of the issue could be that there's a lot of great things happening for you out in the world, and maybe the difficulty in balancing the work life balance there. There's nothing at the bottom of the chart, nothing in the fourth house, and lots of great things happening, maybe in career, maybe in your external life, that could be causing pressure on your relationship life perhaps. And so that's one thing to watch out for. But at the same time, like, I mean, there's great opportunities happening at work, with that Venus Jupiter conjunction there. Lots of fun, lots of uniting sort of energy to be had around, whether it's around work, whether it's around what you do out there in the world. We've also got, Mercury moving direct in the 11th house of groups and community. So it feels like it's a very external time, and you just need to be able to balance what you do within your inner space, and you know balancing work and life is probably going to be a key thing this month, I feel.
Wonderful advice, you. And as a Libra rising, I feel seen. That very much speaks to what I'm experiencing at the moment, and I'm sure what's to come as well. Because your key point you're making there is the externality here. We've got a preponderance of planets for us Libra rising above the horizon. So even if we do want to hide, we're not going to be able to because we've got quite a lot of angular planets. We've got the Saturn, the Neptune, the Venus, and the Jupiter. So we've got a lot of activity going on. And of course, anytime any transiting planet becomes angular, it becomes quite loud in the chart. So I think the positive end for us Libra rising, as Shu has been talking about, we've got the two benefics joining forces. We've got the beautiful Venus Jupiter connection. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. It's going to be in our whole sign 10th house for the best part of a year. So this is a great time if we're in the spotlight in terms of career, in terms of maybe Venus being in there if you're asking for a raise, or having relations, the two benefics in relations with bosses. This should be quite a harmonious time, depending what else is going on with
Mm.
your natal chart, of course. But that external world is probably going to be a happy point at this moment in time. We have the Kepler Symposium coming up, and I'll be starting to travel at the end of the month. So again, this ties into, being public, being out in the spotlight. This is going to be a nice time. But to Shu's point, is this going to be in conflict with some of the relationships that you have, some of those important one-on-one relationships? So where your attention is being pulled away, maybe in the external world, whether that's career, other, public reputation, things of that nature, it might be pulled back by maybe some tension with partners to a certain degree. Of course, we've got the greater malefic Saturn, we've got the Neptune conjunction, we've got Chiron in the whole sign seventh house as well. Then we're going to have Mars going into its detriment in our angular first house. So again, as she was saying, we might have some tension between what we want to get done in terms of our own drive and personality versus maybe some of the balance that we have to try and achieve with our partners. And again, with that Mars, not in great shape, in detriment, going against, I think it's going to get to about 16 degrees of Libra by the time we get to the end of the month. So just be cautious of, Shu said this before, of any minor accidents that might come along. Just be double checking your environment. If you're cutting up food in the kitchen, just watch out for sharp objects, that Mars can be cutting. And yeah, just watch out for that Mars. And depending where your ascendant degree is, maybe watch out for that for the couple of days. But really, yeah, we've got that
Mm.
our chart ruler up there, making that wonderful connection with Jupiter. What else have we got going on? We've got Sun highlighting the 11th house. We've got Mercury stationed to go direct in the whole sign 11th house. So yeah, anything to
Yeah.
do with public standing, community events. Again, this is not a time where we're feeling invisible. This is quite a
Mm.
time where we should be quite visible in the public
Yes.
this time.
And don't worry, I think it'll all end pretty well because Venus will move on to the 11th house, making that
Mhm.
trine to that Saturn Neptune in the seventh. So, whatever tensions you may have been feeling, in terms of work life balance and relationship and having to juggle all of those things all the time, which is a normal part of everyday life, I think it will come to some kind of a nice balance there by the time we get to the end of the month when Venus trines it, where you can balance your aspirations and your goals for career and your friends outside of the relationship with your partner and with your relationship life. So I think the resolution will be there by the end of the month.
I love that point. Absolutely wonderful. Fantastic. Okay, into our Scorpio rising friends. Shu, your thoughts.
Scorpio, I want to look at the full moon that's happening in Aquarius because this really taps into your fourth house, where Pluto is located in for the long haul. So for Scorpio risings, there is this big theme of um, basically transforming your home life, your family life, your inner world in some way. There's big things being excavated there. And I think this full moon is going to really highlight some of the maybe deep shadows or things that need to be worked on. It will reveal maybe some of the difficult pain points. But at the same time, I'm also really liking that this Pluto in your fourth house is coming into this big grand trine with Uranus and Mars when it moves into Libra. So to me, this is almost like a bit of a positive rebellion point for you to really make a stand for what's right for you and what feels important from you at a very deep level, and to maybe um, disrupt some things that have been very long standing issues within yourself that it may be like emotional patterns or things that you might want to break through. Like this is a positive um, push towards making that happen this month. And I feel that this full moon is going to bring those insights to you that will be really helpful in achieving all of that. And of course, we have then the Mercury going direct in your 10th house there in your opposite sign to your fourth house, where this is also another step forward for you, how you're going to make changes about yourself and how that might move you forward in your external life. So I feel this is, like you do best, a month for deep sort of personal development where shifts are really happening below the surface there for you. And it feels like it's going to accelerate this month for you if you choose to take that path. What about you, Callum? Any thoughts
I
there?
love those. I love those points, Shu. And I think for you, Scorpio rising, what really comes to mind in a positive sense is this not only for the month of August, but really for the best part of a year to really expand your horizons. You, in terms of if you're thinking about maybe traveling more overseas or getting deeper into any philosophical works or even astrology to a certain degree. If you've now just starting to maybe pick up astrology, this might be a great time to come to a place like Kepler and to again expand your horizons in that sense. We've got the two benefics wonderfully meeting together in your whole sign ninth house. And depending on what ascendant degree you've got, these are going to make nice connections with your ascendant, that Jupiter eventually. If you've got later degrees of Scorpio rising, got that Jupiter exalted ruling the fifth house, which is also highlighted by the North Node. So creative projects might be on the go. So I think for you, Scorpio rising, anytime that, or any opportunity you have to, again, expand your horizons. And to Shu's point, talking about the new moon as well, I think this is going to be a wonderful point to do that in terms of that self-development and things of that nature. What also highlighting above the horizon, we've got the sun highlighting the whole sign 10th house, Mercury stationed to go direct. Eventually, what I forgot to mention, Venus is going to be dipping its toes into Leo, going to about 8 degrees of Leo. So again, there might be, a positive area in terms of public standing. This could be, always a time to ask maybe for a raise, maybe a better relations with your bosses, things of that nature. I think the only word of caution here I've got is that we've got your chart ruler Mars, which is going to go into the whole sign 12th house into its detriment. So again, this doesn't always mean this. You always have to look at your own natal chart. But, we have Mars going through the 12th, being the chart ruler. I'd watch out for anybody, maybe, trying to stab you in the back, whether it's, co-workers. We've got Mars ruling the 6th house. So just be careful of any hidden enemies in terms of anyone, talking shit behind your back, or co-workers around the water cooler, things of that nature, hidden enemies, things of that nature that might manifest, or maybe anything that you do in terms of action that ties into anything of your self-undoing, maybe certain habits that you have that might be, again, ties into maybe some of your self-undoing. So I think that Mars is my only niggle, I think, for you, Scorpio rising this month.
Yeah, and that sort of adds to, the point of self-development. Maybe one of those things that you are working on changing internally is the issue of pent-up anger or resentments or suppressed emotions and anger, with Mars in the 12th, forming that grand trine.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if we tie in that Saturn as well, we're in the whole sign 6th house, so it might be a time to start restructuring your day-to-day routines and your maybe health regimes to a certain degree. Might be a good idea. And if that's speaking to Shu's point of any pent-up energy, this is a good time over the next couple of years, not just the month of August, to really start thinking about those themes for you, Scorpio rising. Wonderful. Okay, into our Sagittarius rising friends. Shu, your thoughts?
Okay. Well, Sag risings, I'm kind of looking at the fact that there's this 11th and 5th house tension there forming for you this month. And this is possibly something to do with your activities out there in the world, with your friends and communities, activating this Saturn and Neptune in your 5th house, which is the house of children, but it's also the house of your own creativity and your own self identity, I guess. There could be some I'm not sure, like maybe some confusion that could be causing mistakes or misguided actions there. That feeling of frustration with like moving ahead with, your plans and your aspirations, and feeling that instead of moving forward and seeming to be productive, you could feel like you're in a bit of a limbo land there, and that tension there, could be very frustrating for you this month. Yeah, maybe part of the frustration is if you have children, feeling a point of frustration or confusion with how to manage their behaviors at this current stage, or something like that, right? However, um, you know, compared to all of the other signs, I don't think there is a lot to worry about for you this month. You seem to be escaping all of the big, hard stuff there. I would say that this new moon in Virgo that's happening in your 10th house is going to be opening up a big theme of development that's happening around your career and speaking to your ability to manage work-life balance here. And this is a recurring theme with the eclipses sort of activating your chart for the couple of years that it's been in Virgo and Pisces. So I would say that, this is the month to observe and prepare for some big changes that might potentially be happening in the next month. But yeah, definitely it's something to watch out for, that you need to maybe rein in a little bit what you're doing out there in the world, so that you can sort of keep your cool and to keep composed in your inner world and with your family and whatnot.
Wonderful point, Shu. Absolutely. And I think for you, Sagittarius Rising, I think it's been helpful having your chart ruler move into exaltation. I was going to say the best part of the year, but we're getting well into that right now at Jupiter 11 degrees. But, oh, of course, it's going to go retrograde and come back. But having your chart ruler going into exaltation, yes, it doesn't see the ascendant. But again, this is not financial advice, but you've got the two benefics, bouncing and rubbing shoulders together in the whole sign 8th house. So this is certainly not a bad time if you need to maybe go to the bank and borrow money. I would imagine, depending on what is going on with your charts as well on a more personal level. But in general, with the transits, we could be looking at a time that if you need to borrow from banks, this might be a good time to ask for a loan. Again, not financial advice. Or it could be the themes of your partner gets a raise at this time. We've got Jupiter in the whole sign 8th house for a while now, and then we're going to have Venus zipping through this month. So in terms of the financial picture, that's looking fairly good right now. Although we do have a malefic, we have the Saturn in fall retrograde rule in the 2nd house. So that might not be coming from you directly. It just might be part of shared resources. What's going to be really interesting for you, Sagittarius, and let us know in the comments below, is many of you might be getting a preview of what this Uranus and Gemini is going to be like, because anytime a planet becomes angular, especially a slower moving planet that's going to be there for a long time, I wonder, let us know in the comments if you're getting a preview of this Uranus dipping its toes into your whole sign 7th house. And this might be a longer story over many years, but we could be talking about shakeups in relationships. Again, this doesn't have to be romantic. This could be business relations, all of these different factors. But let us know in the comments if you felt any of that shift as Uranus dipped its toes into Gemini, and especially if you have early degrees of Sagittarius rising. But yeah, that Mars might be a bit tricky. We've got the South Node up in the whole sign 10th house. That Mars is going to go into its detriment, moving into the whole sign 11th house. So on the shadow side, there could be maybe some conflict with any wider groups you're involved with. If you're involved in any, say, political groups or a wider group where maybe you're in charge or you're involved a lot, there may be some, stepping on people's toes, maybe some conflict in terms of those wider friendship groups, I think, for you, Sagittarius rising. But other than that, as Shu was saying, I don't think there's much, jumping out at me really in terms of those hard areas. Sagittarius
Yeah.
rising.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then moving
Okay.
on to Capricorn rising,
Yeah.
there's more happening for Capricorns, being a cardinal sign there. And it seems that, there is possibly a strong relationship tension happening here for you, because Mars is moving into your 10th house. Venus is in the 7th house there, activating Saturn. So there again is another kind of statement of balance and how you can juggle all of these three major factors: career, home, partner, so that they can work well together. So I think temporarily, this is a great month for Capricorn risings to take the time out to spend with your partner. Often they're really focused on work and career and being really disciplined and to perform all of their duties. But, this is a month where there is an opportunity to take time out and to put those career matters aside and to let them lay low for a little bit, so that you can have some nice unifying, beautiful moments with a partner, or dating if you're not partnered. And so here it might also raise the question of like what you really want in your life. Like, do you really want to spend all of this time focusing on, your outside endeavors, your career matters, your work? Or, do you want to restructure your life a little bit at the foundational level to be able to recreate something that's more balanced and that's more sustainable in the long term for you? So certainly I think this really is the big theme for you this month, I think. The whole work-life balance and the work-life with partner balance.
Wonderful point, Shu, and is exactly my thoughts I had for you, Capricorn Rising, in terms of what Shu was saying, in terms of work-life balance, relationships coming in, because when we look at these planets, we're going to have half of the planets in angular houses. We're going to have the Mars, we're going to have the Saturn, the Neptune, and the two benefics. We're going to have the Jupiter and Venus, and of course, anytime any transiting planets fall in any angular houses, they tend to be quite loud. So as she was saying, this is very much a push and pull between work. You know, we've got Mars going into its detriment in the whole sign 10th house, in the opposition to Saturn. You know, those planets aren't in great shape. We've got the Mars in detriment, the Saturn in fall. This is compounding the difficulties because it is your chart ruler. It's not quite made that conjunction with the Neptune, but you've got kind of that picture involved. So are we talking about here in terms of a conflict between home life and public career standing? And to Shu's point before, a place where we might get some solace here is relationships. We've got the two beautiful benefics, the connections here with especially when we have the day of the Venus and the Jupiter conjunction. The Jupiter is wonderfully exalted, it's loud, it's in the 7th house. So you might be getting that support from partners if maybe some of the work life is being a bit cumbersome, things of that nature. What else have we got going on? We've got the Sun highlighting the whole sign 8th house, Mercury stationing to go direct in the 8th house as well. So, you know, you might be having conversations with partners in terms of the shared resources, but with the nature of the two benefics in the 7th house, maybe this is not a time where you're really having to worry here. This is maybe you're just maybe talking things through if there have been issues going on in terms of the work-life balance, things of that nature going on for you, Capricorn Rising. And I want to hug my Capricorn Rising friends the last couple of years, because especially with the Saturn and some of the positionings of the planets in the last couple of years, it looks a little bit rough, depending on what else is going on in the chart.
And of course, Saturn is now in the sign of its fall. So you've got a ruler here that is, you know, not particularly happy for the next couple of years. But that's just an indication of, like, you know, time to lay low a little bit. Because my best bet is that for most Capricorn risings, their life is really about career and their contribution to the world. And maybe this is a month where you can give yourself permission to indulge and to, you know, remind yourself of what's really important, like the means to the end, rather than the ends to the means. Or did I get it the wrong way around? But you know what I mean? Like, what are you actually working towards? You know, because you're working too much and then you don't have time to spend your money or to spend time with anyone else that you love. But ultimately, your goal was to actually spend time with the people that you love and spend your money, but you're too busy doing it. So it's
I really love the points you're making here, Shu, because it speaks. I've got a few Capricorn rising friends, and not to be too cliche, but in general, they are quite ambitious. They want to get things going, and I think the difficulty in the last couple of years is we have had especially a lot of the slower moving planets and the outer planets, if they've been making personal connection with your personal planets, is that we've had a preponderance of planets below the horizon. So if you've been wanting your activity above the horizon, yes, we've got Mars there, and of course the faster moving planets. But I think for some of my Capricorn rising friends who like to be out there, be ambitious, and in terms of, you know, the focusing on career and limelight, it's been difficult for some of them in terms of that inner pull, because a lot of these planets are below the horizon, forcing them, as you're saying, Shu, to highlight the areas of life that maybe they don't always look at if they're so busy trying to get ahead and climb the ladder to a certain degree.
And with a fallen ruler, it's likely you're not going to be noticed as much for the next couple of years. So you might as well redirect your energy into what's important and wait for Saturn to move into a better sign, so you're not wasting your breath as much.
Brilliant advice. Absolutely. Wonderful. Okay, into our Aquarius rising friends. Shu, your thoughts?
Well, I'm just looking at this big grand trine that's happening in your 5th first, fifth, and ninth houses. That's a really nice combination of houses to be activated. And this is being activated in a pretty permanent way for you. So it's almost like especially with the activation of this full moon this month, you are heading towards setting up this kind of special algorithm, so to speak, in your life, where your personal sphere is locking in with your creative outputs, is locking in with your beliefs and your what can I say? Your beliefs and purpose in life. So this feels like a really significant month for you from a big picture perspective, to be able to really feel the energy around creating something that's uniquely you, and with the potential of it being something beneficial to the world at a later stage. So I feel very excited for the Aquarius risings that you've got this, beautiful, Pluto Uranus trine there happening in your first and fifth houses, which can be a really big picture, big long-term kind of shift that's being activated by Mars moving in there. So Venus and Jupiter moving into your sixth house, making that conjunction there, can show that things can be coming with a little bit more ease to you, that things don't need to be feeling like such a big grind for you in your day-to-day, that you might feel a bit of a flow in your routines. And even though it is mundane work, but you're kind of feeling like you're getting on top of things. That's what I see in that Venus-Jupiter conjunction there. What are your thoughts there, Callum?
Yeah, wonderful point, Shu. I'm kind of zoning in out on Aquarius risings for some reason, but I think it's the fact that we've got a lot of these planets, they're moving, but they're moving into cadent houses. So, as we get through the month, we're going to have a lot of these planets in, well, Venus is going to move into Leo, but we're going to have that Mars in the cadent ninth. We've got that Saturn, Neptune there. We've got the two benefics. I think this is a lot of busy work. If we're talking about anything you're doing in your day to day, whether that's putting things together, well, whatever walk of life or work you're doing. What I do love about the two benefics getting together is that we've got an exalted Jupiter for best part of a year, ruling the second house as well. So finding that pleasure in the day to day realm, like finding those little things in the day, whether you're dealing with getting the kids ready, or you're dealing with certain things that might sometimes feel cumbersome, but maybe taking the joy from those small things in life. I think for you, Aquarius rising. And another point here, we've got the sun highlighting the seventh house. We've got that Mercury stationing to go direct. So this is highlighting the area of partnerships. As we get deeper into the month, we're going to get that Venus dipping into the seventh whole sign house. So this might be a nice time to go out with the partner, get a babysitter, keep the kids at home, maybe go out for a nice meal and enjoy some quality time with partners at this time. But for me, Aquarius rising, there's nothing major that's really sticking out. Maybe that's just my brain melting in this heat. I don't know.
Well, I can say that as an Aquarius rising with that Saturn Neptune moving through my third house, that I have been studying and going back to study this year in quite an intense course, and that is really turning my whole life upside down. I mean, I love it. It's amazing. But yeah, it's that feeling of my new reality really bogging me down, but also the topsy-turvy of everything, because I'm spending days and nights either working or studying, every spare minute listening to audios, doing homework, all this sort of stuff. It's that busyness of that third house every day, having that Saturn Neptune sort of clash of realities happening. And I know it's only temporary until the course finishes, but that's just an example of how that's throwing my life into this sort of chaotic mess at the moment,
Wow.
in the area of the third house of study and the mind.
Wonderful. And that makes sense. Of course, we've got the Saturn, the Neptune there. We're going to have Mars going into ninth as well. So that's a busy axis of the
Mm,
houses, the third and the ninth, a busy
mm,
sixth house as well. And
mhm.
that's really quite fascinating.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And like you said, it's not angular, everything's cadent. So
Hmm.
really all of this is manifesting in my head. You know, my
Yeah.
head feels really busy right now. And that is what a cadent houses represent. You know, things that aren't manifesting in tangible reality. It's happening in the background, within our internal selves, within our minds.
Wonderful. Wow. And maybe a good way to maybe decompress is maybe to go out with a partner, go out on a date, or even a close one-on-one friendship, something along those
Mm,
lines where maybe you can get yourself out of your own head for a little bit
mhm,
and then and go back into that. Absolutely wonderful.
mm.
Fantastic. Okay, into our last but not least, into our Pisces rising friends. Shu, your thoughts.
Pisces, now you know that the nodes have been in with you for a little while now, and hopefully, this is a story that you're used to, but no doubt it can doesn't make things any easier sometimes. I know our Pisces friends have been through a bit of a difficult period sometimes in terms of their personal growth. I think then this month you're kind of preparing. It's the calm before the storm because you are about to have another eclipse right in your first house next month. So what can you do to prepare? Well, one thing is that focus on the positives, and that's Venus and Jupiter in your fifth house there. It's time to really um, get together with the people and the loved ones that really can support you, people that you call your inner sanctum, your family, whether they're blood family, but gather with a tribe, feel supported. Don't be afraid to speak about your emotions and to share what you're doing, because sometimes sharing about what you're going through can be really good medicine for you. And as the ruler of Pisces being exalted, that's Jupiter in Cancer, this is an opportunity for you to be able to be seen, where you might have wanted to hide and to be feeling like you're on the outside when Jupiter was in Gemini last year. This year, it's time to feel acknowledged and time to also give yourself a pat on the back for how far you've come as well, because it has been a difficult journey for most of the Pisceans, but it's a step towards your evolution. So remind yourself that this is a big growth phase for you, and that with growth comes difficulties. And part of those difficulties might also be rearing its face this month through your financial situation, because you've got that Mars Saturn opposition highlighting the need for work there. Um, Certainly you're feeling the pull towards like restructuring your wealth and your livelihood, and how you're going to be creating and supporting yourself moving into the future. Mars moving into the eighth might be throwing some additional costs and pressures of debt at you. So that is temporary with Mars there, but it is something that could be causing you some stress this month. So just remind yourself that is temporary, that the long-term goal is that you are restructuring a new reality in terms of your livelihood and finances, and that it's important now to get ready and prepared for the next step in your evolution. So
So
you're
beautifully and eloquently put. I don't know how much I can add to that, but it was. But I love that point, because with Pisces rising, especially for the last couple of years, you guys have really been through the ringer. You know, whether we've had that Saturn in the whole sign first house for the couple of years, Neptune for a long period of time. Of course, now dipping its toes into Aries. Last year, of course, we had Jupiter in. Yes, it's loud. You know, it's in its detriment in the whole sign fourth house. So I think for a lot of you, depending, of course, what's going on with your own charts, because you always have to take what we're saying in the context of your own natal chart. But it feels like a lot of you Pisces rising have been through the ringer. So that's why I've been so happy for you guys in terms of bringing this elemental fit for you. You've got, as we've talked about, you've got your chart ruler wonderfully exalted in Cancer. It's in the whole sign fifth house. Depending what your ascendant degree is, it's going to eventually hit that degree if it's not already. this month we've got the two wonderful benefics coming together to merge together, and those couple of days are going to be very nice, particularly as it is your chart ruler as well. So this is a great time for, if you've got any children, to do some wonderfully creative activities, or if you've got any solo projects on the go. This is a wonderful time to take all of that energy for the past few years and been through the ringer to find maybe some creative outlet for a lot of what's been happening. We've got the North Node highlighting the first house. So the North Node for me in the first house is kind of a sense of you do you. And I think some of these planetary transits are really speaking to this at this moment in time. And what else have we got going on? Yeah, I agree with Shu. It's definitely in terms of that financial picture. That might be the only cog in the wheel, not only for this month, but as we get deeper into the next couple of years. With that Saturn and Neptune, yes, it's going to go retrograde back into Pisces. Certainly watch out if you've got late degrees of Pisces rising, but then eventually, that Neptune for many, many years, and then Saturn for a couple of years after that. But anyway, the financial picture might come up and rear its head. We've got Mars moving into its detriment, moving to the eighth house. So that's more of an immediate future. So just pay attention to the financial picture in your life, whether that's the income you're bringing in, or whether you're talking about shared resources, debts, even things of this nature. So that might be the only kicker that might need some attention as not only you go through this month, but as you go through these next couple of years.
Yeah. And just lastly, I guess that
Hmm.
with that new moon actually happening in the seventh house, I know we talked about more
Yeah,
the eclipse that might be coming towards you in your first house, but the seed of that eclipse happens this month in the new moon in Virgo, which is in your seventh house of partnerships, spouse, etc. So, and with Mars moving into your eighth house, there could be some financial issues that you have to deal with your partner, or there could be some seeds opening up here as you reevaluate your partnerships in life as well. Yeah, that's just what
absolutely.
I wanted to add. Yeah.
Wonderful point. Fantastic. Okay. Well, Shu, as always, thank you so much for not only going through the first couple of weeks of August and talking about some of the possibilities for the planetary energies coming up, but through all the rising signs. So, Shu, what's going on with you? What would you like to share? I know, just to reiterate, I'm going to put that link you talked about at the beginning of the video to your article on your website. So, for everybody watching, please check that out below the video. But Shu, what else? What else is going on for you at this time?
Oh, there's lots happening actually. So, firstly, I've opened my books up again for consultations. So, I'm now, yes, I had 6 months off doing consults, but now I'm back. So, if you're interested in a reading, feel free to head to my website and book a session. We're also preparing to launch the new medieval certificate in September. And stay tuned for that because we are pretty much all systems go. We've got some YouTube webinars and interviews planned with you, Callum, that are really exciting, and we hope you'll join us in this wonderful course, which will be based on medieval Arabic, Persian, later Latin astrology from around the 8th century to about the 14th century. In my opinion, where all the good stuff happened in astrology. So so yeah, stay tuned for more activities. We've got Medieval Essentials 1 starting in September, and then Medieval Essentials 2 starting in October. So they're the two foundational courses if you want to get more deeply into the way that into a medieval approach to chart delineations, which then leads to more broader applications of astrology like horary and elections and mundanes, for example. So more to come on that. And of course, everything available on my website for information, but also, yeah, the Kepler website as well.
What's the name of the website again, Shu?
My website is intercycle.com, and obviously the links will be in the video below.
Wonderful. And to reiterate the points we were making before, we're so excited at KeplerCollege for this new medieval certificate, which you have played a big hand in the behind the scenes to pull all of this together. Because what an incredible lineup of instructors we're going to have. We're going to have yourself. We're going to have Ona, those are from Turkey. We're going to have Asan, and who else? We've got Anthony Lewis. Like this team you've put together is just absolutely mind blowing for
Yeah.
this certificate.
I mean, I just feel so honored to be teaching with these masters of astrology, and they truly are. They've been in the game for a long time. They were, my role models. And so for them to be all coming together into the one certificate, I mean, it's just such a privilege and such a gift to the astrological community that all of these minds are at work to support you through your journey. So yeah, we hope you'll join us.
So very excited. And again, we'll put the links to some of the classes coming up, as well as the link to the full discussion about the medieval certificate. And if astrology has taught me anything in the last few years, with meeting brilliant astrologers like yourself and the caliber of these people, of just how little I know and just how much there is to find out and to learn, and in a sense being a forever student, I just, people blow my mind, and sometimes
Yeah.
I feel lost myself, and I'm like, wow, just people on a different level, which is absolutely wonderful as we all learn from one another. So Shu,
Yeah.
as always, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll be when we will be back together again in the next 3 months. My brain just
Scorpio
turned to
season.
mush.
Yes, Scorpio
Scorpio, okay,
season. We'll be
that's where
back.
we'll be at. Sorry, everybody. It's that time of day, and my brain's just like said goodbye. So that was it. So we'll say goodbye now.
Okay, thank you. Bye
Wonderful. Thank you,
bye.
Shu. Goodbye, everyone. See you next time. Thank you.